The San Francisco fog had barely lifted when I badged into Social Core's headquarters for what would be the last time. My coffee was still hot, my laptop bag slung over my shoulder. A morning like any other, except for the knot in my stomach telling me it wasn't. I'm Alex Chen, and I built the technology that powers one of the fastest-growing social platforms in the world. Though if you asked my co-founders, they'd tell you a different story. Morning, Alex. Our head of customer support called out as I passed. I managed to smile, wondering if she knew what was coming. The whispered conversations, the sudden meeting cancellations, the way our CFO Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes lately, it all pointed to one thing. They were making their move. I reached my office, still the same cramped space I'd had since we founded the company 3 years ago. I'd refused to move to the executive floor, preferring to stay close to the engineering team. A real CTO works in the trenches, I'd always said. Marcus and Brett, my co-founders, had laughed at that, calling it another one of my quirky programmer habits. My computer booted up, displaying the familiar lines of code I'd been working on late into the night. SocialCore's proprietary algorithm, my algorithm. The one that had turned our platform from just another social media startup into a billion-dollar company with 10 million daily active users. A message popped up. Emergency board meeting. 9 a.m. Attendance mandatory. I checked the participant list. Everyone except me had been notified yesterday, of course. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, our lead developer. They locked us out of the main repository last night. Something's happening. I know, I typed back. Don't worry, remember Protocol 0. Already in place. Good luck. I smiled despite everything. They thought they had it all figured out. The perfect corporate coup, timed down to the minute. What they didn't know was that I'd seen it coming months ago. The signs had been there since our Series C funding round. Brett, our CEO, had started taking more credit for the technical innovations that made our platform unique. Marcus had begun questioning every development decision, suggesting we streamline the engineering team. Both had gradually excluded me from key meetings about the company's future, but their biggest mistake, assuming that because I was quiet, because I preferred coding to corporate politics, I was naive. At 8:55 a.m., I grabbed my laptop and headed to the executive conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see them already assembled. Brett and Marcus, our new board members from Vision Ventures, and a man I recognized as David Warner, a hotshot CTO from a competing platform. My replacement, presumably. Alex, good of you to join us. Brett's smile was sharp as a razor. We have some matters to discuss. I sat down, noting how they'd arranged the seating, me alone on one side, then presenting a united front on the other. Classic intimidation tactic. I'll get straight to the point, Brett continued. The board has concerns about the technical direction of the company. We feel it's time for a change in leadership. We appreciate your early contributions, Marcus added, not even trying to hide his smirk. But we need someone with enterprise experience to take us to the next level. I stayed silent, watching them exchange glances. My lack of reaction was making them nervous. Your shares will be bought out at their current valuation. Brett pushed a document across the table. It's a generous offer, considering recent performance issues. There it was. They'd been manufacturing performance issues for months, subtle changes to the platform that would only show their full impact after today. Performance issues, I kept my voice neutral. Our user engagement is up 40% this quarter. But retention is down, Marcus countered. The algorithm needs a complete overhaul. David here has experience with exactly this kind of scaling challenge. David Warner sat up straighter, already playing the part of conquering hero. If he only knew what he was walking into. We'll need you to hand over all access credentials and documentation immediately, Brett continued. And of course, you'll be escorted from the premises today. I opened my laptop one last time, logged into my admin account, and initiated a series of commands I prepared months ago. To them, it looked like I was simply following their instructions. All yours, I said, closing the laptop. Though you might want to review the platform's core architecture documentation carefully, especially Section 7 regarding user authentication protocols. Marcus frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Just being thorough, I smiled. Wouldn't want any performance issues during the transition. Brett slid the buyout agreement closer. Sign here, and we can all move on. I signed without hesitation. watching their faces flicker with surprise and then satisfaction. They'd expected a fight, maybe even hoped for one. A messy exit would have made it easier to justify what they were doing. Instead, they got something much more dangerous: quiet compliance from someone who had nothing left to lose. "One more thing," I said, standing up. "You might want to pay attention to the user logs around 9 a.m. on Friday. Could be interesting." "Is that a threat?" Brett's voice hardened. "Not at all. Just looking out for the platform's stability. That's what a good CTO does, right?" As security escorted me out, I could hear them already celebrating in the conference room. Brett was probably explaining to David how the platform worked, not realizing that what he understood about our technology barely scratched the surface. Because what none of them knew, what none of them had bothered to learn, was that I built more than just an algorithm. I built a failsafe. In the lobby, I turned in my badge to the same security guard who had greeted me every morning for 3 years. "Everything okay, Mr. Chen?" he asked, noting the security escort. "It will be," I replied. "Though you might want to keep Friday morning free. Could be an interesting day." Outside, the fog had finally lifted, revealing a clear San Francisco sky. I checked my phone. Messages from team members expressing shock and support. News alerts already picking up the story of my sudden departure. But the message that made me smile was from Sarah. Protocol 0 status. Armed and ready. Timer set for 72 hours. I walked to my favorite coffee shop, ordered my usual, and opened my personal laptop. Time to put the final pieces in place. Because while Brett and Marcus were busy dividing up my stake in the company, while David Warner was probably already rearranging my old office, a simple countdown was running in SocialCore's systems. In exactly 72 hours, when 10 million users logged in to check their feeds, they'd learn the truth about who really built the platform they used every day. More importantly, they'd learn what Brett and Marcus had tried to hide. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back. Sometimes it's letting your enemies think they've won, while the real battle is just beginning. I took a sip of coffee and began to type. Friday was going to be very interesting indeed. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. I spent them in my apartment, surrounded by monitors showing SocialCore's public API status, user engagement metrics, and most importantly, a countdown timer that only I could see. Sarah kept me updated through secure channels. "They're trying to understand your code architecture," she messaged late Wednesday night. David Warner spent 6 hours today just staring at the authentication module. I smiled, imagining Warner's frustration. The authentication module was elegant in its complexity, a piece of engineering art that had taken me months to perfect. But it was also a trap. "How's the team?" I asked. "Waiting, watching. Most of us have rejected their retention offers. We know what's coming." Thursday morning brought a flood of news articles about my departure. SocialCore shakeup, co-founder and CTO out, read TechCrunch. The company's PR team had done their job well, painting it as a mutual decision driven by different visions for the platform's technical future. Brett even gave an interview, skillfully dodging questions about why they replaced the person who built their core technology. SocialCore has always been a team effort, he claimed. No one person is irreplaceable. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from other tech executives, offering condolences and job opportunities. I ignored them all. They'd understand why soon enough. By Thursday evening, the first cracks were starting to show. User reports of strange behavior in the platform's recommendation engine began popping up on tech forums. Small glitches in the interface that only the most observant users would notice. "Warner's trying to modify the core algorithm," Sarah reported. "It's not going well." Of course it wasn't. What looked like simple interface glitches were actually Protocol 0's early warning system activating. Every attempt to alter my code only made the protocol's countdown accelerate. At 8:45 a.m. on Friday morning, 15 minutes before the scheduled revelation, I received an urgent message from Marcus. "Alex, we need to talk. Something's wrong with the platform. Brett won't admit it, but we're seeing serious instability in the core systems. Whatever you did, we can make a deal." I left it unread. At 8:55 a.m., I opened my laptop and accessed a special terminal I built years ago. One final command would trigger what I'd been planning for months. "Ready?" I texted Sarah. "Engineering team standing by. We've got your back." At precisely 9 o'clock a.m., I pressed enter. Across the globe, 10 million social core users logged in to find their feeds transformed. Instead of the usual social updates, they saw a simple message: "Welcome to the truth about social core." What followed was a meticulously documented presentation that began playing simultaneously for every user. It showed the platform's real history, not the sanitized version Brett and Marcus had been selling to the media. Security camera footage from our early days, showing me coding through the night while Brett and Marcus attended parties and networked. Archived emails proving they tried to sell my technology to competitors behind my back. Financial records revealing how they'd systematically diluted my ownership while enriching themselves. But most importantly, it showed what they'd been trying to hide for the past year. Evidence that they've been secretly selling user data to advertisers in ways that violated both our terms of service and federal privacy laws. The presentation ended with a simple statement: "This message brought to you by Protocol Zero, Social Core's true guardian." My phone exploded with notifications. The tech press was already running stories. Social media was on fire. Social Core's stock had been halted after dropping 30% in the first minute of trading. Then came the message I'd been waiting for from a secure government email address. "Dr. Chen, this is Agent Sarah Martinez from the SEC's Cyber Unit. We've received your documented evidence of securities fraud and privacy violations at Social Core. Would you be available for a meeting today?" I was already typing my response when another message arrived, this one from the platform's largest investor. "Emergency board meeting called for 11 a.m. Your presence is requested. Full voting rights temporarily restored." At 10:55 a.m., I walked back into Social Core's headquarters. The security guard grinned and handed me a new badge. He kept it ready, just in case. The scene in the executive conference room was chaos. Brett and Marcus sat ashen-faced as lawyers and board members argued. David Warner was nowhere to be seen. "How?" Brett demanded as I sat down. "We checked every line of code. We had the best security teams audit everything." "That's the problem with people who don't actually understand technology," I replied calmly. "You don't know what you don't know." The board chair cleared her throat. "Mr. Chen, perhaps you could explain exactly what happened this morning." "Of course. Protocol Zero is a sophisticated oversight system I built into Social Core's foundation. It monitors for specific types of unethical behavior, data privacy violations, algorithm manipulation, security breaches. When it detects serious violations, it activates." "And the user data sales?" one of the lawyers asked. "All documented. Every transaction, every secret meeting, every altered log. Protocol Zero recorded everything." Marcus slumped in his chair. "You knew. All this time you knew what we were planning." "I knew the moment you started excluding me from privacy policy meetings. Real engineers build safeguards, Marcus. We plan for failure, including human failure." The next few hours were a blur of legal discussions and emergency votes. By evening, the board had reached its decisions. Brett and Marcus were out, facing SEC investigations and likely criminal charges. I was reinstated as CTO with expanded responsibilities and a seat on the board. The company would immediately cease all unauthorized data practices and implement new privacy protections. Most importantly, Protocol Zero would be officially recognized as an integral part of Social Core's governance structure, with my engineering team leading its continued development. Later that night, after the lawyers had finally left, I sat in my old office with Sarah and the core engineering team. Someone had ordered pizza, a throwback to our startup days. "You could have exposed them months ago," Sarah said. "Why wait?" "Because it wasn't just about them," I explained. "It was about building something that would prevent this from happening again. Protocol Zero isn't just code, it's a conscience for the platform." Over the next year, Social Core transformed. Under my leadership, we rebuilt trust with our users through radical transparency about our data practices. The engineering team expanded, attracting top talent drawn to our commitment to ethical technology. Brett and Marcus eventually pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges. Their fall became a cautionary tale in Silicon Valley about the dangers of prioritizing growth over ethics. The press called it a tech industry morality play, but they missed the real lesson. This wasn't about revenge or even justice. It was about building technology that served people, not exploited them. Last week, I gave a keynote at the World Privacy Summit. Looking out at the audience of engineers, executives, and activists, I shared the real message of Protocol Zero. Technology without ethics is just sophisticated exploitation. Our job isn't just to build systems that work, it's to build systems that work for the good of humanity. The standing ovation wasn't for me. It was for the idea that technology could have a conscience, that code could be a force for accountability. Now, when I badge into our headquarters each morning, I see something different in the faces of our team. Not just pride in their work, but faith in the principles behind it. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about building something so meaningful that their actions become irrelevant. That's not just a lesson in technology. That's a lesson in life. As I write this from my office, Protocol Zero continues its silent watch over our platform. Every day, millions of users trust us with their data, their connections, their digital lives. They may not know about the safeguards protecting them, but that's the point. The best guardians are often invisible, their greatest victories the disasters that never happen. And sometimes the most powerful code isn't the one that runs the fastest or scales the highest. It's the one that ensures technology remains a force for good, even when humans forget their principles. That's the real power of Protocol Zero. That's the real triumph of engineering with ethics. And that's a legacy worth building, one line of code at a time.
I used to think silence meant peace. In our house, it meant hierarchy. My name is Claire Mercer, and I was the child no one remembered to call for dinner. I wasn't the loud one, or the charming one, or the athletic one. I was the, oh, right, you're here too. One, the extra chair, the unused birthday candle, the footnote in a family photo. My father Thomas didn't believe in shouting. He believed in eye contact, who got it and who didn't. He could make my brothers feel like senators with a nod and reduce me to a ghost with a glance right past my shoulder. His love wasn't conditional, it was exclusive. Reserved for sons. I remember one Father's Day when I was 12. I had spent the whole weekend crafting a card out of scrapbook paper and glitter glue, writing him a poem I had edited 10 times. I slipped it under his coffee mug that morning, heart racing like I had submitted my soul for approval. He looked at it for less than 2 seconds. "Thanks," he muttered, eyes never leaving the sports page. 5 minutes later, my brother Brandon, 4 years older already walking like a CEO in gym shorts, breezed in and tossed a gas station mug onto the table. "One, Dad," it said in crooked font. My father beamed. Now that's what I'm talking about. I still had glitter on my fingers. Brandon was the idea guy. He once pitched a lawn mowing app at dinner when he was 16. My dad spent the next hour brainstorming names for it with him. Drew, the youngest, was the golden retriever in human form. Always smiling, always scoring points, always getting tackled and standing right back up. Dad never missed a game. He never came to any of my art shows. Not one. It wasn't that I was unloved. It was that I was unnoticed. There's a difference. One breaks your heart loudly. The other makes you question whether you even have a heart worth breaking. At dinner, he'd lean forward, eyes bright. "Brandon, how'd the pitch go? Drew, coach say anything after the game?" Then he'd sit back and chew while I passed the salad. If I spoke, it was an interruption. If I stayed quiet, it was confirmation. My mother, Ellen, tried now and then. "You're special too, sweetheart," she'd whisper while folding laundry like it was a secret too fragile for the kitchen table. But even she obeyed the gravity in that house. Everything orbiting the Mercer men. I remember once asking for a new sketchbook from the art store downtown. It cost $38.95. My father didn't even look up from his tablet. "What's the point?" he said. "You'll quit halfway like everything else." That sentence stayed with me longer than most of my friendships. I got the sketchbook anyway. I saved up for weeks, walking dogs after school, skipping lunch to squirrel away the money. When I brought it home, he glanced at it once and said, "Hope you actually use it this time." I did. Every page, every night, quietly. By the time I turned 16, I stopped hoping for his attention. I still worked harder. Even I joined the honors program, took AP classes, and started a part-time job at the library. Not because I thought he'd notice. I just needed to know I could do things without him. Still, a part of me hoped. Just a little. When I got accepted into the State Honors Institute, I waited for the right time to tell him. It was a Saturday morning. He was sipping coffee on the back porch. Brandon had just left after borrowing the car. Drew was still asleep. I stepped outside, holding the letter in my hand. "I got in," I said. He looked up confused. got in where I handed him the envelope. He read the first line, gave a small nod, then handed it back. "That's nice," he said, then added, "You'll have to figure out transportation, though. I'm not driving across town every day." That was it. No congratulations. No, I'm proud of you. Just a scheduling concern. The next weekend, Drew made the varsity soccer team. My dad invited the neighbors for barbecue. He ordered a cake. He grilled steaks. He even gave a speech. That boy doesn't back down from anything he said, raising a beer in Drew's direction. Real backbone. I brought out the paper plates. Later that night, I stood at the kitchen sink scrubbing grease from the pans. My mother walked in, drying her hands on a towel. "You did a good job with the food," she said quietly. I wanted to ask her something. Anything. Why doesn't he see me? Why don't you say something? But I didn't. Instead, I said, "Thanks," and kept scrubbing. Things continued that way. Brandon started his first business during college, some online store that lasted maybe 6 months. Still, my dad bragged about it to everyone. "That's initiative," he'd say. "That's a leader." Meanwhile, I started a digital design internship, paid competitive. I mentioned it at dinner once. My dad didn't even look up. "Brandon," he said, "tell them about that new app idea you were working on." I stopped talking. I started saving. Not just money, but energy time. Pride. I stopped expecting approval and started building my own center of gravity somewhere outside that house. I picked up extra work from local businesses, designed flyers, managed their websites, taught myself to code after school using library books and YouTube videos. One night, while Drew and Brandon were out celebrating something, I was at my desk in the basement, eyes blurry, fixing bugs in a prototype I was building. My mother opened the door, leaned in. "Still working?" I nodded. She hesitated, then said, "Your brothers are lucky. Things come easy for them." Then she left. She thought it was comfort. It wasn't. I wanted her to say I was strong. Not just unlucky, but like always, she offered sympathy in place of support. By the time I graduated high school, I had a portfolio, a small savings account, and 3 local clients. I also had a plan. Not a big one, just enough to get out. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was trying to disappear without leaving a hole. I moved out the week after my 19th birthday. There was no big announcement, no goodbye dinner, no packed minivan in the driveway. I told them I'd be staying closer to campus to focus on work. My dad nodded like I'd said I was buying more toothpaste. My mom asked if I'd still come home on weekends. I told her I'd see what I could do. What I didn't say was that I'd signed a 6-month lease for a studio apartment across town under a new name, Claire Whitaker. The name change had been legal for almost a year by then. It wasn't about hiding, it was about starting clean. The old name came with too many rules I hadn't written. The apartment was small, the kind of small where you could sit on the bed and reach the fridge without standing, but it was mine. I bought a second-hand desk, a cheap coffee maker, and a folding chair from a yard sale. My office, my kitchen, my bedroom, all within 6 feet of each other. It was quiet in a different way than home had been. Less hollow, more free. Most nights I worked. Not because I had to, though. Money was tight, but because I wanted to. I was building something, a platform that helped small businesses track their digital sales more clearly. Nothing fancy, but it worked. And people noticed. I started taking freelance contracts through word of mouth, designed better checkout flows, wrote custom code for mom-and-pop shops, answered emails at 1 a.m. because no one else would. Slowly it grew. I didn't have investors or mentors or family asking about my progress. I had long hours, burnt coffee, and stubborn focus. There were nights I wanted to quit, nights where a bug in my code made everything crash and I had to start from scratch, times when I was down to my last $20 and still said no to quick-pay design gigs that didn't align with my vision. I ate a lot of toast. I ignored a lot of birthdays. I didn't send holiday cards. I didn't go back for Thanksgiving. When my family texted, I replied with one-line answers. I wasn't angry. Just elsewhere. Occasionally, I saw them on social media. Photos of my brothers at conferences, golf outings, baby showers. Brandon in a suit giving a speech to some startup group, Drew, holding his firstborn. My dad beside him, beaming like he'd just won something. I watched them live in the center of a story I had exited years ago. And then quietly, the shift happened. One of my longest clients, a small online craft supply store, referred me to a regional distributor. That distributor referred me to a retail tech investor. The investor liked my product. He liked that I'd built it alone, that I hadn't taken outside funding, that I knew what I wanted. 6 months later, we signed a seed deal. Not a massive one, but enough to move out of my studio and into a tiny office space with real windows and chairs that didn't fold. I hired 2 people. One was a self-taught developer who reminded me of me 5 years earlier. The other was a former project manager who'd been laid off after maternity leave. We worked well together, quietly, efficiently. We didn't print press releases. We didn't throw launch parties. We just kept building. One afternoon during a meeting, I got a call from the investor. "I've got something for you," he said. "Anderson Systems is looking shaky. We're in talks to acquire. You're already integrated with half their clients. Think about it." Anderson Systems. That was the company where my dad had worked for the last 10 years. The one he talked about like it was his second home. The one he wore a branded polo shirt for at every barbecue. I didn't say yes right away. I waited a full week. Then I called back. Voice steady. "I'll do it, but make it silent. I want the board to approve it before my name comes up." He chuckled. "Claire, Whitaker always playing it cool." I wasn't playing anything. I just wasn't done. Building. 2 years passed before I saw them again. No calls, no visits, no questions. I don't think they noticed I was gone. Not really. That's the thing about being invisible. After a while, your absence blends in with your presence. No one marks the difference. Then, one afternoon in May, a message popped up in the old family group chat. "Father's Day, BBQ 4 p.m. Same place. Let us know if you're coming." Drew had sent it. Brandon replied with thumbs-up emojis. My mother hearted it. No one mentioned me. I didn't overthink it. I typed a simple, "I'll be there." No one responded. No follow-up, no questions, just silence. Familiar, almost comforting. I spent the next week working as usual. We had just closed the Anderson deal. The legal paperwork had cleared. The press hadn't heard yet. That had been the condition. My name would appear on the executive register the Monday after Father's Day. On Saturday night, I picked up the car. It was a lease technically, but it looked like something off a tech CEO's dream board. Black sleek, almost silent when you drove it. I wasn't trying to make a point. I just wanted to arrive, like someone they wouldn't expect. In the passenger seat sat a small black envelope. Heavy paper. Gold-trimmed edges inside a single legal document with my name across the top. My real name, not Mercer. The morning of the barbecue, I dressed simply. Navy slacks, cream blouse, flat shoes, no jewelry, no lipstick, just clean, quiet confidence. I arrived at 4:07. The Mercer house looked exactly the same. Fresh mulch flag in the yard. Folding chairs in the driveway. My dad stood at the grill, laughing beer in hand. Brandon was showing someone pictures on his phone. Drew was tossing a football with 2 kids I didn't recognize. When I stepped out of the car, heads turned. For a moment, the air seemed to shift, not cold, not warm, just uncertain. My dad noticed me last. He did a double take, then smiled. "Well," he said, flipping a burger. "Look who finally decided to show up." I smiled politely. "Happy Father's Day." My mother came out of the kitchen with a tray of glasses. Her expression was unreadable. We didn't hug. Inside the dining room looked like a Norman Rockwell painting. Long table, white tablecloth, iced tea, sweating in pitchers, bowls of corn and coleslaw. Everyone took their seat like it was rehearsal for a play they'd done 100 times. I sat near the end, not next to anyone in particular. Not expected, not unwelcome. Just present. Brandon started talking first. Something about a funding round, new investors market traction. My father nodded like a proud manager at a performance review. Drew added a story about hitting his quarterly bonus and winning some kind of team award. I said nothing. No one asked. The meal went on. Eventually, someone raised a toast. I think it was Drew, to Dad, the backbone of the family. "You taught us how to lead." Everyone murmured approval. My father stood holding his glass. "I couldn't be prouder of my boys," he said, pausing to let it land. "Real men, they don't quit. They don't ask for favors. They build. That's what this world needs." He looked around the table and Claire. He added with a shrug and a smirk. "Still out there trying to figure it out, I guess." A few chuckles. Nothing cruel, just casual dismissal. The kind that cuts cleaner than rage. I placed my fork down. I actually brought you something, Dad, I said, reaching into my bag. The room quieted. Forks paused. Glasses stopped midair. Just a small Father's Day gift? I stood and walked outside. The backyard was quiet except for the wind moving through the trees. I walked to the car, opened the passenger door, and picked up the envelope. Its weight hadn't changed, but something in me had. Not heavier, just stiller. Inside, the dinner conversation carried on in low hums, forks clinking against plates, ice rattling in glasses. When I stepped back through the doorway, the sound dimmed, or maybe I just stopped listening. I returned to the table, walked to where my father sat at the head. I placed the envelope in front of him gently. Not like a gift, more like a file being submitted for you, I said. He looked at it with mild amusement, like it might be a card or a joke coupon. What's this? He asked. Read it carefully. He tore open the flap, unfolded the paper. For a moment, his face didn't move. Then his brow tightened. His eyes tracked the lines slowly, then faster. The corner of his mouth dropped. He looked again as if rereading might rewrite what he'd seen. His hand twitched. The paper made a soft, crinkling sound. Brandon leaned in. What is it? Drew stood up slightly. Is that what is that, Dad? My father didn't answer right away. He looked up at me, for once really looked. This isn't real, he said. His voice wasn't angry. It was empty. It is, I said calmly. The acquisition finalized last week. The name you didn't recognize on the board memo that was mine. Brandon's voice broke the silence. Wait, Claire, are you saying you bought Anderson? I didn't correct the name. Not yet. I didn't buy it alone, I said, but I own the majority stake. And the board just approved a new operating structure. My father's lips moved, but no words came out. He glanced back at the paper, then at me again. You work for me now, I said softly. Drew sat down hard. Brandon scoffed. You've got to be kidding. That company's been around since before you were in diapers. I looked at him. That's true. And yet here we are. No raised voice. No fireworks. Just the sound of a door unlatching somewhere deep in their understanding of me. My mother, still holding a serving spoon, hadn't moved. She cleared her throat. Claire, was this necessary? I turned toward her. No, it wasn't necessary. It was just overdue. I looked back at my father. I used to think I had to do something amazing to earn your respect, that maybe if I built something big enough you'd finally see me. Turns out I only had to buy the thing you already cared about. He didn't respond. Brandon reached for the paper. My father didn't stop him. His eyes were still on me, or maybe on the space where I used to sit at the edge of every table waiting to be asked something. Anything? I gave him a faint smile. I'm not looking for approval, I said. I brought this so you'd finally stop pretending. I turned, picked up my bag, and walked to the door. No one followed. No one called out. As I stepped outside, I glanced toward the driveway. The car gleamed under the porch lights, still black, expensive in ways they'd never asked about. Not loud, just undeniable. I got in and closed the door. The engine started with a quiet hum. As I pulled out of the driveway, I didn't check the rearview mirror. I didn't need to. From inside the house, I heard something break, maybe a glass, maybe a silence. Either way, it wasn't mine to fix. The drive home was quiet, not the hollow kind I used to know, not the silence of being ignored or forgotten. This was different, solid earned, like the end of a long, slow exhale. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel regret. I felt finished. Back at my apartment, I hung up my coat, placed the envelope copy in a locked drawer, and poured myself a glass of water. No champagne, no music. Just stillness. My inbox had a few unread messages. One from a client, one from an investor, and one from my mother. Subject: was that really necessary, Claire? No greeting, no sign-off. Just the kind of question that came too late. I didn't reply. I read it once, then clicked print and slid the page into a folder in my filing cabinet labeled Legacy. The next morning, I walked past the mirror in the hallway. For years, I had avoided it. Not out of vanity, but because every glance felt like a reminder of who I wasn't supposed to be. But now I paused. The woman in the reflection stood straight, calm, and whole. She didn't look angry. She didn't look victorious. She looked real, like someone who had built a life from scraps and silence. She didn't owe anyone an explanation. I spent that Sunday doing laundry, vacuuming, reading an old book I hadn't finished in years. I watered the plant in the windowsill. Somewhere along the way, I noticed I was smiling, not wide. Just enough I knew what was probably happening back at the Mercer house. Raised voices. A paper being passed back and forth. My brothers asking questions no one had answers to. My father sitting in that same chair staring at a reality he could no longer rewrite. He wouldn't be fired, not yet. I wasn't cruel. I didn't want to destroy his life. I just wanted him to know that mine had never needed his permission to exist. That night, I opened a new notebook, clean pages, no lines. I wrote 2 words at the top of the first page. I'm here, not loud. Not in all caps, just clear. They'll talk. I'm sure Brandon will say I planned it for years. Drew will say I've changed. My mother will wonder where she went wrong, and maybe someday they'll realize that I didn't come back to impress them. I didn't come back to win anything. I came back so they'd finally stop pretending I was never there. I don't know if they'll ever say sorry. I don't need them to. Some truths don't require acknowledgement. They just need to be said once, out loud, then left behind. I wasn't invited. Not this year, not the year before. Not for the last 10. The email arrived on a Tuesday subject line, cheerful, desperate to sound warm. Whitmore Family Retreat 2025. RSVP. By Friday, it wasn't meant for me. I knew that before I even clicked. But I clicked anyway. Everyone was there. Camille, of course, her husband, both kids, Aunt Jeanine from Savannah, Uncle Roger still wearing that ridiculous fishing hat in every photo. Even Cousin Lily, who once stole my prom dress and denied it with a straight face. But not me, not even a typo version of me. No Carla. No Clara. Just air where I should have been. That kind of exclusion doesn't shout. It hums, quiet, constant, like a fridge running in the background, until one day the silence reminds you it's gone. I sat in my office in Santa Monica surrounded by glass deadlines and degrees, a corner view I fought hard to earn, but the room felt cold in a way California sun couldn't fix. I looked at the email again, then at my name, missing like it had never belonged. I almost closed the laptop. Almost. But something made me open a new tab. I typed in the name of the beach house where the retreat had always been held. A wide, whitewashed house on the Georgia coast, porch swing. Twinkle lights, the last place I saw my father laugh before his stroke made it hard, and there it was. A new listing, not for rent, for sale. No group text, no call. Not even a, just so you know, I read every line. Price lowered, seller-motivated deed under review. I recognized the agent. Same woman who handled my grandmother's property, and just like that, I felt the air shift. They were getting rid of it. Quietly, like they got rid of me, like I was just another memory to unload. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I closed the tab, turned to the bookshelf behind me. There it was, the turquoise shell, the one my father gave me at 9. You think in tides, Clara, he said. Don't ever let them make you small. That's when the idea began. They'd erased my name from every invitation, but I still remembered how to sign one. The thing about being erased is, no one ever tells you it's happening. It starts slow. One missed call. One family photo posted without you. One seat left empty at a dinner table where no one bothers to ask where you are. At first I tried. I sent Christmas gifts, joined the group thread when it still had my name on it, flew back for Thanksgiving even when the flight cost more than my rent. I offered to help with Mom's mortgage when Camille's boys needed new braces. I did what youngest daughters are supposed to do. Show up, stay quiet, be useful, but useful only lasts so long. Camille always had the spotlight. She was warm, photogenic, loud in a way people called charming. She hosted baby showers with signature cocktails, designed matching t-shirts for reunions, once called me from a Michael's craft store just to ask if I liked teal or coral for the beach house table settings. I said, I don't think I'm coming that year. She said, That's okay, Clara. We'll save you a plate. But no one did. After our father's stroke, I flew out alone, sat in the hospital with him while Camille was too overwhelmed and Mom couldn't deal with seeing him like that. I fed him, read aloud from his favorite Steinbeck book. When he could speak again, his voice cracked. You came. That winter, I asked Mom about estate planning, not for money, just to understand what would happen to the house, the accounts, the trust he'd mentioned. She smiled tightly, said Camille, and I have it covered. Don't worry your pretty head, I stopped asking. The last time I tried to visit the family beach house, the spare key wasn't under the mat anymore. Camille said they'd changed the locks after a break-in, but I hadn't heard about any break-in. I started skipping holidays. I sent cards that never got replies. I stopped correcting them when they called me busy or distant on Facebook posts. One day, Mom posted a throwback photo of Camille and Dad sitting on the beach, the sunset behind them. I remember that photo. I took it. I was right there, off frame. She cropped me out. That was the year I stopped sending gifts, but I didn't stop watching. Savannah, my old neighbor, now working as a paralegal, still looped me in, quietly screenshots snippets, email threads I'd been deleted from. They think you disappeared, she said once, but you've just been listening. I wasn't gone, I was waiting. And sometimes the people who forget you the fastest are the ones most afraid of what happens when you come back. I didn't buy the house out of revenge. I bought it because I was done pretending my absence was a glitch. The listing had been live for 13 days, quiet. No big announcement, no family group text, just a quiet for sale link buried in a real estate newsletter I almost deleted. The house wasn't even listed under the Whitmore name anymore. It had been moved to an LLC, something Camille likely set up after Dad passed a shell structure to make things clean. I knew that language. I lived in corporate strategy. I'd seen that trick 100 times, but I wasn't mad. I was methodical. I printed the documents, called a friend in property law, scheduled a call with Savannah that same night. She ran a title search in under 10 minutes and found something we hadn't expected, a clause in the trust tied directly to me. Dad's original trust had a fallback clause. If the estate fell into delinquency, missed tax filings, lapsed insurance, lack of disclosure, the secondary beneficiary me had full claim to title reassignment. The taxes had lapsed, so had the insurance. It wasn't even negligence. It was laziness. Arrogance. Camille and Mom probably assumed the house could sit there half-used, half-claimed until they figured out what to do with it. But Dad had built a back door. Just in case, Savannah's voice was quiet. If you want it. Clara, it's yours. No fight necessary. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the turquoise shell on my desk, still intact after all these years. I remember Dad brushing sand off it and handing it to me like it was sacred. You think in tides he'd said, not waves, you come back stronger. That night, I opened a clean spreadsheet, my own finances, stock options, liquid assets, discretionary savings. I wasn't wealthy like Camille's posts implied, but I had built something solid. Quiet, independent. I reached out to the listing agent 2 days later. She didn't recognize my name until I said Whitmore. Clara, daughter of Thomas. She paused. Oh, you. You're the other one. Yes, the other one. I signed the purchase documents under the fallback clause. No press, no notice. Then I opened the booking portal and reserved one room, the master suite. 3 nights, check-in, Friday. Guest name, Miss C. Whitmore. Under preferences, I typed, please place a bottle of Perrier Jouet on ice. Guest prefers firm pillows, cotton sheets, and full privacy. When the confirmation came through, I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just sat still. They had erased me from the invitation. I had just added myself to the deed. I arrived early, not to greet anyone, not to watch, just to see the house again before they touched it. It looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just grown. The porch swing was still crooked. The shutters needed paint. Someone had replaced the front lantern with a cheap solar bulb, but it still breathed the same way in the ocean wind, softly, like it had waited for me. I didn't stay long, just long enough to check that the champagne was on ice. The sheets were turned down, and my name was spelled correctly in the guest registry. Then I left. I parked 2 streets over in a rented sedan and waited. At 6:42 p.m., Camille's white Audi pulled into the driveway. Her husband got out first, fussing with luggage. 2 kids tumbled out behind them, already arguing. Camille stepped out. Last, sunglasses perched high like a crown. Next came Mom riding in the back of Uncle Roger's SUV. She wore her resort linen white-on-white pearls at her throat. No makeup, just tinted lip balm. The uniform of a Southern woman preparing for gracious denial. They rolled their bags toward the front steps, all smiles and movement. I could hear laughter. Vague instructions. Camille led the way to reception, and then everything stopped. The front desk clerk, a young woman with a pixie cut and an apologetic smile, said the words like reading a weather report. "I'm sorry I don't have any of your names listed on the guest reservation. Are you with Miss Clara Whitmore's party?" Camille blinked. "I'm sorry, whose party?" "Miss Clara Whitmore. She has the full reservation." The name hit like glass on tile. There was a silence, not the kind that waits for someone to speak, but the kind that rearranges the room. I stepped out of the car then. Not for drama, just because it was time. My heels clicked against the tile floor as I walked in, calm and certain I didn't look at Camille. I didn't need to. "I can clarify," I said to the clerk. "I'm Miss Whitmore. The deed finalized 2 weeks ago." Camille turned her face tight. "You bought the house?" "Yes." Mom's voice was soft, confused. "But why would you do this?" I looked at her, not angry, not cold, just finished, because I was never invited. "But I was never gone." Camille stepped forward, arms stiff. "You think this is funny? You think hijacking our family trip proves something?" "No," I said. "It settles something." I handed my ID to the clerk. "Anyone not on my guest list should be politely escorted. But don't be harsh," I added almost gently. "They're family." The clerk hesitated, then nodded. Behind me, no one spoke. Not Camille, not Mom, not Uncle Roger. The silence did the work for me. Let them explain it to each other. Let them say my name. Now, they left the front desk without a word. No shouting, no storming off, just stiff shoulders and silence that trailed behind them like smoke. I didn't follow, I didn't need to. They knew now that was enough, or so I thought. The next morning, a news van showed up. I saw it from the window, white with blue lettering, parked just beyond the hedges. A man in a button-down shirt and too much gel stood outside holding a mic. He squinted into the camera like he was breaking a major scandal. I didn't open the door. But the moment the segment aired, my phone lit up like a fire alarm. Texts, emails, a voicemail from an old coworker I hadn't spoken to in years. "Is this true? Did you really take your family's house through a legal loophole while your dad was sick?" The headline read, "Daughter uses trust. Clause to oust family from generational property." They made me sound like a predator in heels. The story quoted a close family source who claimed my father was in cognitive decline and manipulated into signing over his legacy. No name, but I didn't need one. Camille had always known how to weaponize other people's sympathy. I sat with it, didn't cry, didn't type a statement. Instead, I called Savannah time. I asked. She didn't need more context. "I'll send the file in 15. What she sent was meticulous. Organized, dated screenshots of texts between Camille and Mom. Messages that read, "Don't worry, Clara's not coming again. She makes everything about herself. She's too busy proving something to care about family. Don't feel bad excluding her. She's used to it." There were audio files, too. One from a speakerphone call caught mid-lunch. Camille's voice, sharp and clear. "Clara was always too fragile to survive in this family. Let her rot in her condo. We're better off." But the most important file was the video shot from 2 summers ago. My father sat on the back porch legs wrapped in a blanket, holding a chipped mug. I sat beside him just out of frame. His voice was soft but steady. "I want Clara to have this place," he said. "Camille makes things loud, but Clara makes things last." I hadn't watched it since the day we recorded it. I'd saved it. For moments like this. The next morning, I uploaded everything to a secure drive, sent the link only to one reporter I trusted, someone who'd written a piece years ago on elder care, abuse, and inheritance conflict. No captions, no commentary. Just a message. "This is the full story. Decide what matters. It didn't go viral. It didn't need to." By afternoon, the original headline was pulled. The station issued a quiet correction. My inbox slowed, so did the messages. That night, Savannah texted me 2 words. "They're quiet." And then a third. You ready? I looked out the window at the ocean, black and endless under the moonlight. Yes. The courthouse smelled like dust and disinfectant. I arrived early. No entourage, no lawyer in an expensive suit. Just me, a navy dress my grandmother once called steel-willed blue, and a folder tucked tight beneath my arm. Inside that folder was everything they didn't expect to surface. Camille was already seated when I walked in, all-white pantsuit, lips pressed into a line so flat it could have sliced paper. She didn't turn around, but I saw her fingers tapping against her phone, fast and nervous. Mom sat beside her spine. Too straight, pearls trembling slightly with every breath. She glanced at me once, then quickly away. The clerk called the case. Whitmore v. Whitmore, petition for injunction on disputed property filed under claim of undue influence and elder manipulation. Their attorney stood first. Slick tan, too young to remember dial-up. He said words like intent, vulnerability, coercion. He called me estranged. He made sure to pause before the word. Let it hang. I didn't flinch. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. No theatrics, just the truth. Your Honor, I'd like to submit video and audio evidence relevant to the trust and my father's clear intent. The judge nodded. His glasses slid slightly down his nose as the bailiff dimmed the lights. The video played. My father wrapped in that old blanket. His voice calm. I want Clara to have this place. Camille makes things loud. Clara makes things last. She's the only one who came after the fall, the only one who didn't ask for anything. A pause. Then he looked toward the camera and said clearly, "It's not about fairness. It's about memory." I watched the room. Mom blinked too fast. Camille's jaw twitched. Then came the audio, the call, her voice. Let her rot in her condo. She was never part of this family. She should have been easier to control. Silence followed. Not the stunned kind, the resigned kind. The judge leaned back, tapped his pen once-twice. This court finds no grounds for the petition. The evidence confirms clarity of mind and direct intention from the deceased. The language used by the plaintiffs suggests exclusion, not misunderstanding. He removed his glasses. This court does not resolve emotional wounds, it enforces law. And in this case, the law is clear. He banged the gavel. Petition denied. Camille stood fists clenched but still. Mom remained seated, eyes glassy but dry. I gathered my folder and walked out without looking back. On the steps outside, reporters waited. One mic slipped forward, half a question hanging in the wind. "Do you have anything you'd like to say to your family?" I paused. Just long enough, then, "No, I said it already. I just used quieter words," and I kept walking. The house was quiet when I returned. No suitcases on the porch. No voices bouncing off the walls, just the hum of the ocean and the faint rattle of wind through the loose shutters. Inside, it looked the same, but lighter, like something had been drained from the rooms. Noise, maybe, or denial. I didn't touch anything at first. I walked through slowly, touched the wood grain on the banister, smoothed the corner of the rug in the hallway, let the silence tell me what stayed and what had left. In the office room, once my father's, then Grandma's, I opened the bottom drawer of the old desk, the one they never emptied. Inside was the wind chime we'd made together. Seashells strung on fishing line, blue thread frayed knots loose, my 9-year-old handwriting still faint on one of the larger shells, EW. I sat on the floor, legs crossed like a child, and began untangling. I didn't fix it to make it pretty. I fixed it because some things don't need to be perfect to still matter. When Savannah arrived, she brought wine and paper towels. "You didn't think I'd let you claim victory without cleaning windows, did you?" She smiled. We worked in silence. Two women scrubbing away more than dust, scrubbing years of dismissal of being the footnotes in someone else's story. At sunset, I hung the wind chime outside the kitchen window. It caught the breeze like it remembered how to dance. Later, as we sat on the porch, Savannah asked, "What now?" I looked out toward the horizon. They said I left, that I drifted, but I didn't go anywhere. I paused. They just chose not to see me. We didn't toast. We didn't celebrate. We just sat there, 2 glasses in hand, watching the sea move like breath. When I turned off the lights that night, I did it room by room, from the inside. If this story stirred something quiet in you, something you haven't spoken about in years, you're not alone. There are more of us than you think. People who didn't leave. We were just never called back. If you've ever been written out of your own story, leave a comment, or just a word, so the silence doesn't win this time. We read every one,